From Global Kingston,
This is CKWS News at 11.
Good evening. The provincial government announced the creation of a new conservation reserve in Prince Edward County this morning. The first of its kind in over a decade, according to the province. The new Monarch Point Conservation Reserve will preserve and protect thousands of acres of land along the county's south shore. Darren Davis has more.
This colorful insect is the inspiration behind a newly created conservation reserve here on the southern shores of Prince Edward County.
I am so proud to officially announce today, after countless years of advocacy and effort of all of you, Ontario's first new conservation reserve in over a decade, the Monarch Point Conservation Reserve.
The reserve now spans 4,000 acres of wetland, shoreline, and forest. The area is home to countless species at risk, including turtles and butterflies like the monarch. The area was once controversially slated for wind turbine development. Residents that organized to protect the environmentally sensitive land are pleased with the announcement. Some are hoping for more recognition of the sensitive biodiverse area.
And this is a small step. There's so much more that we could easily do. There are big things like UNESCO Biosphere. There's one not far from here, Gananoque.
Next steps for the new reserve is developing a land management plan, balancing preservation and sustainable recreational use.
There needs to be very specific criteria outlined, and there needs to be monitoring to ensure that that criteria is adhered to.
Some of that land management plan could be aided by the work already completed by the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Previously, the NCC had received private funding to produce a natural heritage study of the lands that now form the Monarch Point Conservation Reserve.
Mapping habitats, mapping where invasive species are that are threatening survival of monarchs, which the reserve is named after. Also mapping trails and so on, so that Ontario Parks now, as they work with community to develop property management plans, will have all that information.
Giving all stakeholders a better chance of striking the necessary balance between use and preservation of one of Eastern Ontario's natural treasures. Darren Davis, Global News, Prince Edward County.
Kingston police have arrested a man in connection with an alleged shooting over the weekend. Police say it happened at about 2 a.m. July 29th near Curtis Crescent in Midtown Kingston. According to police, the victim was in a vehicle with a group of people known to them. Police say when they arrived to their destination and began getting out of the car, one of the occupants fired a gun towards the front seat and struck one of the passengers. The victim was seriously injured. Police later arrested 18-year-old James Roediger of Toronto with aggravated assault and several firearms-related charges. Anyone with additional information on the incident is asked to contact Kingston Police. A deadly couple of days on the water north of Kingston, with OPP reporting 2 deaths in 2 separate incidences over 2 days. The first happened on Thursday night on Burrell Lake. A fishing vessel with 4 people on board capsized. 3 were able to make it to shore, but the 4th did not resurface. The following day, the underwater search and rescue team found the body of a 51-year-old Durham resident. The second incident happened on Friday shortly before 11 a.m. on Little Cranberry Lake. A vessel and a kayak had collided. The kayaker, a 45-year-old from Kawartha Lakes, was pronounced dead at the scene. The collision remains under investigation. 2 people are facing a murder charge after an alleged homicide near Bishop Lake on Eastern Ontario. Provincial police say they responded to an unspecified disturbance call just before 6:30 p.m. on Saturday in North Frontenac Township. They say paramedics arrived to find a 22-year-old dead at the scene, but offered no other details, including the victim's identity. OPP say they arrested a 39-year-old and a 41-year-old and charged both with second-degree murder. Ontario is lowering cannabis price markups in an effort to compete with the black market. The Ontario Cannabis Store, which is the Crown agency responsible for the legal distribution of pot, will make the changes starting in September. The OCS will reduce the markups it puts on cannabis products it sells to retailers, lowering its profit margin.
It's really going to put the power back into the hands of licensed producers to think about the price that they want to bring a product to market in Ontario. And that means they could keep the extra margin room, they could pass it on to retailers, and then likewise retailers can determine if they want to keep some of the extra markup room or to pass it on to consumers.
The Cannabis Council of Canada says this is a good move for businesses and likely consumers.
It's not direct with an impact on the consumer, but it will create economic conditions where the consumer continues to have the benefit of a very competitive pricing environment. I think it's really best to see this as a good first step. There's more that needs to be done, but we really recognize the Ford government in Ontario for taking this step.
The OCS says the hope is that this will help strengthen the legal cannabis market once the changes are made in September. The Cannabis Council of Canada says this is a good move for businesses and consumers. Bay Ridge Drive is undergoing a facelift to make it more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. From Cataraqui Woods Drive to Woodbine Road, construction crews are working on building a multi-use path just off Bay Ridge Drive. The project will be done in 2 phases, with this current phase expected to be completed by November. Phase 2 will begin next summer and finish in early 2025. This phase of the project has a price tag of $4.2 million, with some funding help from the provincial and federal governments.
Building the infrastructure and building the pathways that are off-road, we feel it's a bit safer for users. They'd be a bit more inclined to get out there, either walk or bike, and kind of use these facilities as we build them. By providing space at the intersections with bike signals and a separated crossing just gives more space and more safety, essentially more confidence and comfort to the user.
Several grocery stores across the Greater Toronto Area remained closed today as thousands of workers entered day 3 of a strike. 27 Metro stores have been closed since Saturday. Close to 4,000 workers walked off the job after rejecting a collective bargaining agreement. Striking workers say the reality of working at Metro is unsustainable, with 70% of the jobs being part-time. The strike is only impacting stores in the GTA. It was a landmark moment Monday morning in the town of Gananoque. Residents gathered downtown to celebrate the contributions of a notable community member who has accomplished a lot in his 99 years of life. Boaz Mohammed Yusuf has more.
Happy birthday to you.
A birthday at any age is cause for celebration.
Happy birthday to you.
When the celebrant has been around for nearly a century,
happy birthday, dear Charlie,
and has had as much of an impact as Charlie Donovan, it becomes an even greater cause for celebration.
Hip, hip, hooray!
We call him Mr. Gananoque. Charlie has been involved in almost every major event in Gananoque.
And one of those major events was the push to purchase and preserve the Landon Bay hiking trails.
He volunteered at Landon Bay. He built Landon Bay.
When asked what inspired him to become such a builder in his community, he referenced a speech from his graduation ceremony at Queen's University. Those in attendance were challenged to become a slugger in life.
A slugger was a person who made up their mind what they wanted to do and followed through and was fair in all their dealings.
And those words stayed with him and have driven him to lead a life that has touched so many members of the community.
Rather more than celebrating his 99 years, I think this is a gesture of the fact of the gratitude that we have for the fact that we've had 99 years of Mr. Donovan.
And according to Mary Donovan, plans are already underway to celebrate her father's centennial birthday next year.
We have really exciting plans for next year. We're going to have our Tin Boat Festival.
But the older Donovan doesn't want to look too far ahead, instead choosing to focus on the present and the moment in front of him.
Well, we're taking it a day at a time, you know.
Words to live by from a man who has done a lot with the time he's had on this earth. Fawaz Mohammed Yusuf, Global News, Gananoque.
We have some sad news to share from our CKWS family. Corus Kingston's chief engineer Roger Cole passed away early this morning. Roger began working behind the scenes here at 170 Queen Street 30 years ago and was eventually named chief engineer, overseeing CKWS television as well as our 2 radio stations, now called Big and Fresh FM. Just over a decade ago, Roger also took the engineering reins in Peterborough at our sister station Chex and 2 more radio stations. Roger received a Lifetime Achievement Award just last year from the Association of Central Canadian Broadcast Engineers for his career-long contributions to the broadcast industry. Roger was a straight shooter who always put the good of the people he worked with first. You might just say he kept us all on the air. Roger Cole passed away after a long battle with cancer this morning at Providence Care. He was 62.